everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to do some yarn cake dyeing in a way that I don't think I've really tried yet, but it's something I've been meaning to do for a long time. But first, in my dye pot, I have 8 cups of water. This is my dedicated dye pot that I use for dyeing and is not used for food. And I'm going to add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar. And now to this dye pot with no dye in it, I am going to add my yarn cake. I'm swirling it around a bit just to get help get that water in, and we're going to work on getting this submerged. Now today's video is sponsored by Baron. Thank you so much, Baron, for sponsoring this video. I am really excited to dye this yarn for you. If you would like to learn more about how you could sponsor an episode of Dyepot Weekly, you can find a link to the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop in the video description and iCard. And so I am pressing it because I want liquid to go through the cake. I don't care about it being like perfectly saturated. The yarn cake is sitting on the bottom of the pot, and I would say there's maybe half an inch or so that is actually above the water level. And for right now, I'm really okay with that. Our plan today is to inject dye into the center of this yarn cake, liquid dye, and then we'll watch it spread and see what we end up with. Normally with cake dyeing, I add dye to the outside, or occasionally with Easter egg dye tablets, I do insert them into the center of the cake. But I haven't done this with liquid dye yet, and so I'm really excited to see how the colors might spread. Let's start heating up the pot, because I don't want to add the dye while everything's cold, because then it might not spread very far. And that's also why I started with a slightly higher concentration of acid, because I kind of want things to strike, but I also want them to spread. But my concern is if I inject that the dye might just all go to the outside, and I want some of it to sort of latch on to where it is in the cake. At least that's my hope. I plan to start slow and then add a fair amount of color. Right here I have a 1% stock solution of some Jacquard Gun Metal, and there's not very much left. But I sort of just injected it into that spot. It doesn't seem like it's spreading very much, but we cannot see what's happening underneath. I'm sort of waiting to see if we'll see it sort of move. Here is some 1% periwinkle. Again, not a ton of volume, but I'm sort of pressing and squeezing. This feels very like tie-dye-esque. Like I have no idea how deep this is going, how much white there might be. This is fun. Sorry for the focus. Right now it looks like a creepy smiley face. Oh my goodness. But things aren't, like, we're not seeing any color come out into the outside yet, which honestly is surprising me, because that is something that I was expecting. I'm continuing on with, let's see, I've got some Jacquard Purple now. Sort of squeezing this on either side of that gunmetal. I'm trying to poke this center of the bottle into the center of where some of that color is, just to see if it pushes down. I'm like afraid, so I'm both afraid to move the cake, but also so curious, so curious what's gonna happen. I think I want to add some more liquid. Oh, but I don't know, guys. All right, I don't want you guys to come for me if I mess with it too much, but at the same time, I don't want there to be like a ton of white behind. So I filled up my gunmetal bottle with water. There is some residual color in here. and I am squeezing this into the center. So you can see there's that stream going there in the center, and this is slowly adding color. This will add some pastel to that center, but I don't know if it'll also force, like if that pressure will force some of the color out more from where I first placed it. This is going real slow, guys. Okay, so I've done about half the bottle in that actual center. Now I'm gonna do some where I added all this other dye. I've got the tip inserted and we are squeezing. So from all this, it looks like, okay, that's the first color that has gone on the outside, dripped out from here. It does look like there's almost a bit of a halo here in the center area. Let me set this aside. Yeah, it's almost as though you can see some breaking. If I zoom in, you can kind of see there's barely any spread. Like barely any spread. Again, we don't know what's happening on the bottom at all. I think I am gonna have to come through and inject some colors towards the outside because it so far is not spreading out a lot, but I did put a lot of acid and honestly, there's a lot of resist. Okay, I think I am going to keep adding this color around the center area. It is, yes, it's introducing some color just so you can see it is sort of that pale. If I squeeze some over here, you can see it's a very, very pale pastel blue. Honestly, what would happen if, I'm like hesitating on myself. So I'm making it up as I go along. I'm less even injecting now and more just squirting on top. But we are going to come in with more color. It might not even feel very gradient if everything I do today is like this sort of blue and purple. So far what we've learned is that the colors aren't, if the cake is on the bottom, the colors aren't spreading out a ton, which is very interesting and gives us some more applications for the future. I definitely want to add in some other colors in the more outer area though, because I don't want it to be just white and then a dark one end. I would say that right now this yarn does have sort of a danger of feeling like two different colorways connected. But let's go in with some espresso bean. Sort of injecting it. And again, we don't know what's happening on the bottom. So I've got the tip inserted in some layers, and for the first time, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Well, okay, the color was coming out already, and the water is not that hot. I'm gonna wash my hand off right there. But we did start to see some color kind of go and be exposed to the outer edge. Okay, so that was espresso bean. In keeping with this sort of theme, let's do some chestnut. Again, I cannot say how deep this is going at all. But, oh dear. Learning that it is taking a bit of time for my squeeze bottles to stop squeezing. This is wild to me. It is wild that things are not going out of the cake as much as what I was expecting. Here's some Pecan Brown. Oh, and that one, this cake was done, I wound it twice. So it is very, very loose. And Yeah, so it's done very loosely, but these colors are very much staying sort of where I put it, which means that I know I didn't just like inject into the center, but this does give some good potential for cake dyeing, because a lot of times you get a shallow layer of color around the outside, and we're definitely getting some bolder colors that will kind of come up on the interior. I do think that I want to legit add some color to the outside of this though. I don't want there to be a ton of white, and there might still be a bunch of white on the inside, there might not, but I think that I want just like a layer that won't go super deep because there's a fair amount of acid in here. I want a layer of color on that outside edge. All right, so we're gonna start with, and I might decide that we want more color, but we're gonna start with just 1 tablespoon of a 2% stock solution of Dhrama Silver Gray around the outside. So that would be about equivalent of 2 tablespoons of a 1% stock solution, and we can see what that adds to that outside. I want more. I want more. So 2 tablespoons around this outside edge. You can see it is not going to go over the top. It might come underneath to the bottom. It's not a color that has a ton of contrast with the others, but it does have the potential of giving something that ties it all together. I don't know, we'll see. But I don't know, I'm really, really excited. I don't mind there being some white left, but I didn't want it to feel super pastel, if that makes sense. And so Baron, I hope that you are feeling excited by what is happening here. This is something where I'm changing my plan as things go along, because I truly did expect whatever I injected in the center to leak towards the outside edge a bit. I'm now gonna wait, gosh, I think 20 minutes, and then we'll be back. So clearly I knew that things weren't gonna spread all the way through the center. I know the kind of resist that you get with cake dyeing. And so I do expect that some of these colors I injected would stay locally. I just thought that the act of squirting the dye in might shoot it to the bottom and therefore to the outside. So that's the element that really did surprise me, is that I was able to, even with a fair amount of pressure, inject the dye and have it stay locally in the yarn cake. I think that this is awesome, and I'm definitely going to need to revisit this in the future to play around with some different kinds of gradients and cake dyeing. This even gives the potential to do multiple cakes, say in the catering steam pan, all at once, because you can have it sort of all laid out there. And so that is really cool, really, really, really cool. But anyway, I'll be back soon. Okay, it's been 20 minutes and there's still definitely color around that outside edge. I'm coming in with a yarn mop now. I could add more liquid, but I don't want that color. Gosh, hopefully the cake is not burnt or something. That would be tragic. So you can see that there was some gray left, but ultimately not that much color. Ooh, there's some like reds and stuff in there as well. What I took was just another skein of Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn, which is also 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and I'm placing it around this outside edge to soak up some color. That actually did that relatively nicely. And again, you can see that there is some color in here, but not as much as I thought, to be honest. So I think actually at this stage I'm comfortable adding more water to our pot. Okay, I'm coming in with another 8 cups of water, which is also lifting up this cake for the first time. And again, I really, really hope that the bottom isn't burned. We will flip it shortly, but I just wanted to give it time to move, give time for all of that color to absorb. Sort of enjoying this like cloud that we've got around the yarn cake, which I think is beautiful with these really saturated tones. So I think I'm going to heat things up for about 10 minutes. Oh wait, I do want to add more acid. 1, 2, about 4 more tablespoons of white vinegar. I didn't want the acid to be reduced, but I wanted to give a chance for things to spread out now that it definitely had a chance to sit. So 10 minutes, we'll come back. Okay, I am now going to turn off the heat and leave things in here for a while to cool. The yarn mop, ooh, we do have some color over there. Oh dear, I lost our cake a little bit. I'm gonna let things cool off a bit and then we can flip the cake over to actually see what the bottom side looks like before removing it to cool and wash, etc. But don't worry, this yarn mop is not done. I have some leftover dye from another project. I've got some bottles that I want to empty out. And so, yeah, I think it'll be really, really fun. So, yeah, I'll be back in a little while. There is still some warmth in here, but I am going to remove our yarn mop and set it aside. And let's take a look at our beautiful, beautiful cake. And carefully flip it. Okay, so what surprises me right off the bat is some orange color. That is interesting. Could that be from... No, I definitely injected the gunmetal in more towards the center. Oh, that's actually kind of cool, those pops. There's definitely some warmth in here. What is the most surprising to me is how much white there is down here. I really expected some of those colors to penetrate when I was putting them in, to penetrate towards that center. Can we peek? Ooh, but we're gonna have some deep, oh, this is gonna be really, really fun to look at. I'm excited. All right, I still wanna let it, I'm debating. Yeah, I'm gonna let it cool a bit longer so that way I can comfortably remove it. Thought it'd be fun to toss in a little leave no dye behind into the middle of this video. Here is our yarn mop that has, gosh, a lot of like purple and pink, and I definitely have some other colors that I'd like to add here because honestly, I have a bunch of stuff that is left over and I don't want to leave it behind. The dye bath is currently cool and it does have acid in it. This dye bath is left over from the January 2019 ChemKnits Dye Along live stream, and in the recap video I am using some leftover yarn and I'm just kind of cold applying these colors here. And so here is one of those squeeze bottles that I emptied onto the yarn, and I mean, I'm just rinsing it out here on the yarn. I think things might strike slow-ish, but I expect that they will start striking versus completely blending together, but honestly, you never know. Okay, this bottle was some, this was some Jacquard Periwinkle. Popping that in. Ooh, I like what's happening. So Baron is actually sponsoring 2 videos, and I know that I have plans for the other one, but I really like what is happening here. This is similar to what my vision was, but not quite. So I don't want to give any spoilers to that vision or anything, but let's just say I am intrigued. So we've already rinsed out the gunmetal, but I just wanted to rinse it out a tad more. We're leaving no dye behind. And now we're coming in with the big one, because this is Maybe before I do the black. Well, no, we're just gonna go for it. This is definitely gonna change some elements of this yarn because the black is so pigmented compared to what we had before. But I truly, truly want to leave no dye behind. And so that is what we are doing. And I'm now going to turn on the heat. Things might spread. Trying not to move things. But I actually think what we got here is pretty cool. I like it a lot. And oh my goodness. I am thrilled. Okay, so I'm gonna heat this up for 20 minutes and we'll come back and see where we are. 20 minutes are up. I just turned off the heat and this feels overwhelmingly navy to me when there was not a lot of navy in there. I think because there were a lot of purples and when you put like a little bit of gray over it, that ends up looking a little navy-ish. Oddly. We'll see what the final colors look like. I am going to leave this. Here, we've absorbed all of our colors. I'm happy that when we were adding the colors that things sort of they spread to give us this subtle, soft look, but they didn't spread so much that we can't, that it's all one color. There's different hues in here, so I'm very happy with the leave no dye behind. With the help of my tongs, I'm going to carefully lift this up and set it aside. Okay, so it's interesting. This brown, what did I inject over there? Oh, is that the chestnut? This orange might be from chestnut. Interesting. I think that was the reddest thing I did. It was like it broke. Ooh. But looking through, it looks like these patches where I injected color, it really is making the yarn cake look tie-dyed. So we see like a lot of solid color up there, but there's elements. Ooh. I think something that I probably should have done here is I really should have diluted the dyes before injecting it, because I think the local depth of shade is really high for a lot of these colors. But I am very excited about this. It might be a little wild when we open it up, but it's so funny, and it's gonna be really funny looking at this yarn next to the like leave no dye behind skein, which is just so like easygoing and simple. But I'm gonna let this finish cooling. I am now going to very, very carefully wash our cake, and by wash I really mean just rinse. Whenever I do a cake dyeing, I always do a wash of the yarn after I have unwound the cake, because there's no good way for me to wash to the center without like ruining it, and it's so loose the center could pop out so easily. So I'm really happy that I'm not seeing any bleeding. I'm going to go put this through my spin dryer. I mean, I'm not even using soap now. Ooh, this is fun. I'm going to go put this through the spin dryer really carefully and hang it and sort of let it dry for a couple of days. As for our yarn mop and the little bonus leave no dye behind, I am going to add some clear dish soap. You can use Synthropol. It doesn't have to be dish soap, but this is just what I like to use. I even have Synthropol on hand, but for some reason I just keep reaching for what I know. And I will be using this yarn in the spin dryer as the counterbalance to that cake, so that way it works nicely. But yeah, we'll come back when things are a lot drier than they are now. Our yarn cake is 99% dry, and I'm ready to go and unwind this onto a niddy noddy so we can see the color progression that we got. And I have to say, I am really, really excited to see how all these colors play into one another. Will this yarn feel like there's two skeins stuck together, or will we have some kind of cohesion to it? I don't know. So I'm gonna go start unraveling it. The cake itself is 99 or even maybe 100% dry, and really it stayed in really good order through the entire spin drying process. I will unwind this cake onto my 1-foot PVC pipe niddy noddy, which will give us a 4-foot skein in the end. I really like using these PVC pipe niddy noddies that I made, just because if the cake is wet, then this can really hold up to being wet and having things moisture. You can even have yarn in it and stick it under a faucet, and so I really like that. Whereas if I had a beautiful wooden one, I might be a little more concerned. Not to mention that you can store it flat because it just twists, and you can change the size and everything like that. If you want to learn more about how I made this niddy noddy, I do have a video on the channel. I didn't mix all of the dye for this bonus skein in this video, but these colors are so soft, and I think that this will knit up into a really subtle, tonal, variegated colorway. Even with, I mean, there's some more blue notes, more purple notes, more gray notes. We do have all that tonal variation, or the hue variation in here, but a lot of it feels very subtle and beautiful. As I've started unraveling, the inside looks so cool. You can see some of that little speckling, but on the bottom side, we really see some pockets where we injected that color, which I think looks so cool. There's definitely more white than I expected, especially seeing the way the top was, but because the top has so much color on it, I think we'll have good amounts of color penetration all the way through. And I'm excited to see what happens. Now on the top, you can really start to see those injection marks. It looks so, so cool. And gosh, there really was not a lot of force when I was squeezing in because that dye did not go far. Maybe if I had used a syringe instead of the squeeze bottles, I could have forced the dye in further, and especially something that maybe had a larger hole opening. But the yarn itself is looking so, so pretty right now. And at first I was like, there's a lot of white. That pastel color isn't really white. It's more beige. Like there is some hue to it that I can't quite put my finger on yet. We're starting to see a little bit of a gradient. It's very subtle, but as we get to the center, it's definitely darker, and you can still see those areas where we did place that color in, which is really cool. I did not expect the breaking to happen, but I think that those pops of that golden yellow orange color really pull this together in a beautiful way. Hurrah for happy accidents! Right here we have this beautiful variegated gradient where we start with some gray, and then we have these bright patches of orange and a reddish brown, and it goes into more 2 shades of purple. Very subtle transitions in a way that almost feels like we made a fade and we dyed variegated colorways and slowly like removed a color and introduced another color throughout. That is really, really fun. I was super concerned when I saw that breaking and that orange color come in. But I think this brings this yarn to a very autumn holiday place that is really, really beautiful. I still need to go wash the yarn, but I just took it off of the niddy noddy, and you can see this progression from here's the very most outside to the very most inside of that cake, and that colorway that we get through the middle. It is fun, and I will say this color on the outside with the reverse speckles does feel a little different than these larger variegated patches, But since we do have some of that broken orange color and some of this reddish purple in that area, I think that helps tie everything together. One thing that has now become apparent to me from a couple different projects is that not all acid dyes behave as predictably as what I'm used to with, say, food coloring. This orange color is not something that I've seen from using this chestnut color in other circumstances, and so I'm not sure if it's because the dye stock is older, if it was legit breaking, if there was a temperature reason that the color shifted. There's many different factors in there, and I believe that it was the chestnut that broke into this color, but I'll try to see. It might be hard for me to tell. I have seen some strange color changes with gunmetal, Jacquard Gun Metal in the past that surprised me, but I think that that could have been a temperature difference. So yeah, we just have more to explore and play with. I am gonna go wash this yarn off camera. I will pop back in if I see any major bleeding or anything, but I'm not expecting it. Farron, thank you so much for sponsoring this episode of Dyepot Weekly. I have been wanting to try this technique for a while, and I really, really hope you love this yarn because I think it is so cool. Goodness, I really want to try this technique again, but use a non-superwash yarn. Something where the colors won't necessarily strike as fast, so we might see them sort of push out a little more. I know I kept adding more and more color in places, and that was once I saw it wasn't spreading very far from where I put it. But there could be some ways we could force that color to move through the yarn a little more, and I'd really like to play with that. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and if you enjoy the videos that I create and the yarn that I dye and want to help support the channel on another level, go and check out the ChemKnits Patreon. Patrons can get early access to new content, behind the scenes sneak peeks, and they get to vote in the direction of some of my videos. And so it's a really, really fun way to support the channel on a monthly basis and engage on another level with me. Of course, don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up on this video, and a comment below letting me know what you thought. And if you want to make sure you don't miss any videos, press that little bell icon to make sure your notifications are on. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone.